Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are live here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters. Got John Hendrickson and myself here today, and we are finally back. We have taken a long break over a holiday weekend, and John, was it a good break, or are you happy to be back? Which one, or both?
It was both, but I'm happy to be back.
Okay. Well, good. You were in the frozen north, much more frozen
yeah.
than it was today here in Iowa. Let me ask you a question. When winter comes back around much more quickly where you're from, up on the Iron Range, do people forget how to drive over the course of the summer?
They do, yes. Yeah.
Because people were all over the place this morning here in central Iowa.
In fact, there was snow even before Thanksgiving, and there was people in the ditch up there.
Yeah, I guess I hold them to a higher standard, and maybe I shouldn't, but it's a real mess. So, well, good. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about government spending. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about state government spending and local government spending. Kind of some of the process, because the legislative session is right around the corner.
Yes, only a few weeks.
Only a few weeks away. So we're gonna talk on that. Do you got any hot takes real quick before we get started on Hunter Biden?
I'm not surprised.
I'm not either. I don't know why people are surprised this happened. Are you kidding me?
And then I just before coming up here, I saw another headline on Fox News where the president wants, before he leaves, he wants to send, I don't know, it was almost close to $1 billion of additional aid to Ukraine.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
So why not?
I mean,
they're preparing for the end over there, and we're not going to get into that. But even
it just never ends.
Yeah. Well, I won't go into it too much, but there's no end to how much money they want to give Ukraine. Here's my take on Hunter Biden. Of course, it wasn't a surprise. I fully expected this to happen. An expansive pardon of anything he might have done over the last 10 years, which, I think the interesting thing is that may include some things that he has not been charged with. And well, what are those things? Here's the hot take, though, John. For 4 years, we have been being told that there's nothing to see here. Yeah. And that anybody asking questions about Hunter Biden it's all a political witch hunt. If that's the case, then why is the pardon a big deal?
That's right.
And because I think there's a lot more there than the tax charges and the weapons charges. There's a lot of unanswered questions about his dealings with foreign governments, and those absolutely implicate President Biden as well. So
it was all just a Russian hoax.
It was all just a Russian hoax. That's exactly right. Well, Kash Patel at FBI is going to help us get to the bottom of all that. But I also digress on that. Here's a couple other things that go with it. Is that it's the popular one I've seen covered is that, well, if Biden has done this with a pardon for Hunter, then turnabout's the same as when President Trump starts pardoning January 6th defendants, for example, or whatever it is. There's no high ground that Democrats get to take on that one now. Another interesting one, though, too, is, and I need to kind of spend some more time thinking about this, is that Hunter Biden can no longer plead the Fifth Amendment in front of Congress because now he has pardon.
Yes.
So he has no protection from self-incrimination because he's free and clear.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to watch. But here's another interesting one that I saw is that there are probably some in the Democrat Party that actually appreciate this because it gives them an easy way to distance themselves from the Biden administration. Because now they can call out the president for doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Without having to actually do it squarely on the policy.
Yeah. I think you're right on that.
Yeah. So something to watch.
Yeah.
Well,
and there's definitely a lot of Democrats looking to put blame on why they did so poorly in the election.
Yeah.
Whether to blame Biden or Harris or Walz, or they're looking for someone to blame. And this just adds incentive for that.
We've talked about this a little bit, John. Yes, obviously there's a lot of finger pointing when you lose an election, everybody wants to point the finger at everybody else. There's a lot of reasons why I think to try and pin it on one person is difficult. I think there's a lot of macro trends that are happening in our economy and in our culture that probably drove most of that national election. But anyway, okay. But I do want to talk about some things in Iowa, because on the heels of the election, we sort of let the dust settle. We're looking ahead towards the next legislative session. There's going to be a lot of conversation on property tax policy next year. You wrote a piece along with our friend Tom Sands about this issue and what we've talked about at ITR on a 2% hard cap on local government spending. Give the folks a sense of what's in that article.
Yes, so this was published, I believe, this past weekend in the Cedar Rapids Gazette.
Now, most of our listeners did spend the holiday weekend scanning through itrfoundation.org to get the latest. But if they weren't, for whatever reason, it's there.
It's there, yeah. And so basically what Tom and I argued was, what would be an ideal solution to Iowa's property tax problem? And we looked at it from two perspectives. One is, as you mentioned, the 2% property tax, which cap, which basically says let's cap city and county property tax collections per year at 2%. So they can't collect more than 2% property tax, and we've looked at that. And so right now, if we had that cap on, it would save roughly $250 million, save taxpayers $250 million. And that's just a common sense reform. And as you and I have talked about, this is not a revolutionary idea. Blue states, liberal states like New York has a property tax cap that's similar. Massachusetts has a property tax cap. It's sometimes called a levy limit as well.
Okay.
And so that's one thing we argued. The second thing we argued, and some of the listeners will remember, last spring was the first when the property tax statements were sent out, and sometimes they were either called truth in taxation or direct notification, but they were very confusing, and it had your city, your county, your school district information on there. Property tax information, and also provided your the date, time, location of that local government entity's budget hearing, public budget hearing. And those notices are very hard to understand, and so a lot of taxpayers are left confused. Now, the intent of that, the original intent of those notices was well intended, but the design was very poor. And so there needs to be improvement on that. And so Tom and I argue that there needs to be much better transparency in that design, and as well as making sure that there's some improvements in those notices. Because people, you have to have a design where people understand the notices. And what is the most important thing of that notice is people want to know how their bill will be impacted.
What's my bill? I don't care about a percentage rate. I don't care about a levy rate. I don't care about which one whatever. I don't care the year. I want to know what I paid last year. I want to know what I'm going to pay this year. If my local government wants to spend this amount of money, how much do I have to pay?
Yeah.
Period.
And so the solution was last spring, because these notices are so complicated, let's just send people to the Department of Management with a link for a calculator. Well, that's not going to help the situation. So that's why we need a redesign. And even our liberal neighbors to the north in Minnesota have a much better notice than we do. And so we could actually use that as a template and have a much better, transparent, easy to understand notice that would make that much user-friendly for taxpayers.
And we've given those examples to the legislatures. They've seen them and what's possible. I've heard that one of the reasons that we can't do this is, there's different computer systems, whether it be at the treasurer versus the whoever, and they don't talk to each other, and so we can't do it. I think that's absurd.
Yeah.
And even if there is an obstacle there, figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any problem sending me the bill.
That's right.
So don't come back at us and say, we can't figure it out. You absolutely can figure it out. If it was an exercise in trying to take more of my money, you'd figure it out yesterday.
Yes.
If it's an exercise in trying to figure out a way to save me money, all of a sudden it becomes far too complicated.
Yes.
Okay?
You're absolutely right.
So figure it out.
Yeah.
And we'll get that fixed. I know we got a lot of legislators that really do want to improve this, and I'm going to remain optimistic.
So the article says, okay, there's a two-part solution. Mm-hmm. One, address local government spending with that property tax cap, and fix the transparency part of it by strengthening those notices.
Yep.
And that's the best path forward. Forget the fancy formulas. Forget dancing around the other issues. Get to the heart of the issue, which is the spending.
Right.
That's what we need to do.
Yep. It is. We can't say it often enough. The issue is spending at every level. The state has been able to cut taxes because they have limited spending.
Yes.
And they've right-sized it, and we're in a position to do more. We cannot fix the property tax problem without also addressing spending at the local level in the same way.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to move money around or have the state pick up the bill, none of those will result in any meaningful savings, and the problem persists.
Yeah.
And the people of the state are demanding solutions, bipartisan solutions.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. So go to itrfoundation.org. Check that out. We're going to have a lot more coming out on that going forward. Couple of things that I can't let this go without talking about, John, though, and we talked about this earlier today in the pre-production meeting or in the post-pre-production meeting conversation or whatever you want to call it. But, maybe we should call this a regular session of Government Gone Wild. But here's a couple of examples. The city of West Des Moines is, and this is from the Des Moines Register, is planning to spend $91 million in rebates and incentives to a developer to build an indoor water park. So, I get that there's some, there's going to be tax revenue because the project exists, and so we can front load that. $91 million for an indoor water park. Is that using taxpayers' money and putting it to their highest and best use?
I would say no.
I'm sorry. I need you to just agree with me right now, John, because would it be nice to have that there? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I don't plan on going to an indoor water park. Are you going to go? You're a resident of the city of West Des Moines. You going to go to the indoor water park?
I may want to practice my cannonballs, but
that's year round. You don't shut that off for the winter, John. You got it.
Yeah.
That's great. And here's the test. When we talked about this, would this kind of development happen anyway without the city giving him the incentives? And we saw this a little bit up in Johnston, John.
Yeah.
The city gave a bunch of money to the developer, and I still don't know whether that project's getting built or not. That's been on hold, going forward, not. Maybe we should let the free market decide whether these projects need to get built or not.
Yeah.
And, look, and that corridor is hot. It's that Grand Avenue, because it's going to be the grand experience. But
there's a mentality of it as, you build it and they'll come, and it's basically this almost like a Keynesianism on steroids, that all this incentives will just you pump money into it, and the return on investment is going to have a multiplier effect, and it's just like the soccer stadium. The Polk County supervisor saying it's going to have a major return on investment, and it's just going to flood with all kinds of dollars coming in, and so it's going to pay for itself.
It feels like growth for the sake of growth. Is that we want to funnel this money to a big thing so that we can say we built a big thing.
Yeah.
When they call it a community amenity, but it seems like it's more trying to pull in tourism dollars. But I'm struggling with how that. I guess they go over and shop at Jordan Creek Mall when they come, maybe. But I don't know if you crawl out of the pool, you want to go back out in the cold and go over to the mall and walk around.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's just a lot of money for one project. Now, maybe I should just be okay with it because there's going to be 150 affordable apartments in there that it, like I don't know who needed that sweetener in it. Like, you know what? I really don't like the idea of $91 million going to a developer, but if we get some affordable apartments out of it, well, now I'm good. Like, really? Who cut that deal?
Yeah.
Anyway, I have said many nice things about the city of West Des Moines because I think it is largely a very well-managed community. Right across the street is the Mid-American Recplex, which is done the right way with a lot of private dollars, and hopefully expand on that. But this one just doesn't feel right to me. The other one, I don't know if you saw this, John. The city of Dubuque wants to give $1 million to the Field of Dreams project, which I don't know if you know, you're not much of a sports guy. The Field of Dreams is not in Dubuque.
Yeah.
Field of Dreams is in Dyersville.
Yes, yeah.
Or outside Dyersville. Yeah. So they want to give money to a community that's, I don't know, what is it, 10, 20 miles away? Or I don't know for sure. And they're not giving it to build something here. They're just giving it away for marketing.
Yeah,
it's these tax dollars that are paid are going to improve, to deliver services for people in the community. And there's all this chasing the shiny object, the big building, the tourism dollars, that thing that it's about priorities.
Yeah, that's
right.
And
they just feel like priorities aren't being set right in these communities. And so we're going to keep talking about these when they come down the line. Okay. Said earlier about the legislature being right around the corner, committee chair assignments have been out. Released. That's one of the first things that each of the caucuses will do after the election. Say, here's who's going to chair the Ways and Means Committee or the Appropriations Committee, all down the line. I will not bore our listeners with the complete list of committee chairs because it is a lot of inside baseball. But there's some committees that we work with a lot that determine a lot of policy that we work on. The possibly the, at least if you're a Republican, the chair, conservative, the Ways and Means Committee is the big one, the tax cutting, tax writing committee. Those two chairs are going to be the same. So Representative Bobby Kaufman on the House side and Senator Dan Dawson on the Senate side. They're in the same place. We've had good, productive working relationship. Both those guys, they were at our tax day last year.
Yes.
And both did a really nice job with that. And so I think we're going to continue to see good policy come out of the Ways and Means committees. I mean, any thought on that? Or
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. The appropriations chairs, and we don't do as much of our work on the budget side, John, other than we just want to encourage folks to spend responsibly. Those are going to stay the same as well. On the House side, Representative Gary Moore, and on the Senate side, Senator Tim Kreinbrink, who have been in those spots now, I think, 4 or 5 years, I think, for each of them. So experienced on that. I got to say this one, and I don't know if you were part of this conversation earlier, John. One that kind of brings me joy is the Judiciary Committee. And we do very little of our work in the Judiciary Committee, but largely populated with lawyer legislators. I spent at least the time when I was not majority leader, I was always on the Judiciary Committee, and I enjoyed it. There's a high volume of bills, but a lot of it is the Iowa State Bar Association's agenda, and it can get some pretty technical things in there. And the historically has been chaired by a prominent lawyer legislator. The two chairs now are our friend Senator Jason Schultz and Representative Steve Holt, who are both from the same district in Western Iowa.
Yeah.
Great guys, both of them, both very bright. Not really cut from the lawyer legislator mold, let's say.
Yes, yeah.
And watching those two bouncing judiciary bills back and forth to each other is just going to be a joy to watch. But that's the ultimate inside baseball right there that makes me kind of giggle because I love those guys.
Who are the Democrats on the Ways and Means? Have they been announced?
I don't know if they announced ranking members yet. If they did, I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's for as long as I can remember, the House ranking member was Dave Jacoby.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know, but
I was just curious, especially on the Senate side, because it's such a small caucus now. But I mean,
and that was, for a long time was Pam Yoakum.
mm-hmm.
And I thought both Representative Jacoby and Senator Yoakum did good jobs as the ranking member, as sort of the lead of the opposition, call it, on both of those committees. Kudos to them. And I know our friend Tom Sands always really enjoyed working with Representative Jacoby as well. So, so we'll see what comes out of that. One that's interesting to me, because there's a lot of new chairs, is that will be really interesting to watch, is the local government committees. And for a long time, those committees didn't do a lot that was really significant. But in the last several years has really become much more important, especially as some of the reform things that we talk about center around what's happening in local governments. And there's going to be a lot on the agenda again this year for those committees. In fact, maybe some of those notification statements that may go through local government.
Yes,
I don't know, but two new chairs. One on the House side is Representative Megan Jones, who for a long time had done the Rules Review Committee and always did a really good job with that committee, and we didn't get enough attention, but was critically important. She did a really good job with that. So she's moving on to a policy committee this year. And then on the Senate side is a friend of the show, former guest, Senator Scott Webster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of ideas on things he wants to do. He was kind of channeling his inner Elon Musk when I talked with him about what he wants to do on the on the local government committee. So
and he has a local government background.
He does.
Right.
Yes. I'm blanking on whether he was on the city council or board of supervisors though.
Yeah.
Shoot. I apologize now because I know Senator Webster's listening.
I want to say city council, but I could be wrong.
But either way, he has certainly understands how the inner workings and some of the technical things that might fly under the radar that really will make a difference. So I'm really excited to see what Senator Webster and Representative Jones can do with those committees because there's a lot going on there. So we will continue to look at all of that. Last one, John, because this is where I would ask you if you have anything else, and then you remind me. But this time I remembered what the other thing was, is you wanted to talk about this Dave Elbert article.
Yes,
It came out right before Thanksgiving, but it really was really bad. Do you remember the headline here? I'll read it because I'm not going to ask you with it. It's called Belt Tightening, and in here is the lie has already begun. What's the gist of this article here?
Well, it's basically it's going after Republican fiscal policy, basically the tax cuts and spending what they would consider cuts, which I would disagree with, and basically crediting that it's the COVID money that has kept Iowa afloat, and basically that has kept our fiscal foundation strong, which has been I would just say it's a lie that the Democrats have been arguing. I mean, and this has been something that Director Craig Paulson, who's our director of the Department of Management, has repeatedly addressed. And yes, Iowa has received, just like every other state, has received a lot of money from the federal government, but none of that has been spent by the legislature on the general fund.
We have worked really hard to debunk this. You've written on this, John.
Yeah.
When we talk about the state of Iowa having a surplus, whether it be in the state general fund budget or in the taxpayer relief fund, that is not COVID stimulus money.
Yes. Yep.
None of it. And it's not been built because we took the COVID money and redirect and freed up other line items in the state budget. None of it's COVID money. Not fungible, none of it.
That's absolutely right.
And so to say, because we have said all along that the state of Iowa, we said it at the outset of this show, that the state of Iowa held the line on spending and then was able to cut taxes. The Democrats want to try and throw a wrench into that. And that's not fair. I shouldn't say the Democrats, because there's Democrats that are actually on board for right-sizing some of this. But the attack on those that want to cut taxes is that, well, no, the only reason you have that money to cut taxes into is because of Biden's stimulus money. That's wrong. It's incorrect. those dollars went to other projects or were returned to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the surplus money, it is ongoing state revenue collections flowing into the state treasury and either spent or not spent. And that's it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's troublesome, especially from a publication that tries to get at, business issues and fiscal matters, that they can't get that basic fact right.
Mm-hmm.
That they're writing this long article on a foundation of something that's not true. That really is just being used as a political messaging hit.
Yeah. Well, we have another forthcoming article. I should say it's a forthcoming. It hasn't been posted yet, but there's been some arguments out there that have been written that some local officials have blamed the income tax cuts for raising property taxes.
Yeah,
which is another
Yep.
bogus argument.
Yep.
And so Tom and I addressed that as well, which is another ridiculous argument that's made by some local officials blaming the state. Again, it's another passing the blame, and this is again just trying to what I would say it's a desperate argument trying to attack the Republican fiscal policy by people who want to see sort of the tired old liberal tax and spend agenda.
We can have serious policy debate over the appropriate level of government spending and taxation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's absolutely have that.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a whole bunch of people all over the place, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
But to not get the basics right of the money and where it flows through, well, that's troubling.
Yeah.
Because we can't even move on to the meaningful conversation
That's
about
right.
what's the right level of spending.
Yeah.
And this article is coming from, the governor's talked about eliminating the income tax, and where's that money going to come from? She has talked about that. We've talked about that. But that's not what's being talked about for the coming General Assembly.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that any serious conversation about that, as the article point, would have to come out with perhaps other revenue.
Yes. Yeah.
Or phased in over a period of time. But it's almost like it's just a hit in search of some policy inputs. And
well, they always talk about, fully funded.
Well,
And investment drives the economy. And that, to me, that as they say, that dog doesn't hunt. I mean, that's just another argument that doesn't fly, because if that was the case, then again, these other failed states, California, Minnesota, all these states would be very successful then if you can just tax and spend your way into prosperity, and that's just that's not happening.
Yeah. And maybe this dovetails with some of the spending projects at the local level, John, but we don't need to get too deep into political philosophy here, but it's a competition of ideas on how those dollars work.
Mm-hmm.
And one side believes that if you tax a bunch of money and then spend it on a project, that you get a return on some of those dollars. And maybe you would get some return.
Mm-hmm.
You and I and fiscal conservatives have as a foundational belief that individuals can spend that money far more efficiently than government.
Yeah.
And when they spend that, those dollars reverberate through the economy at a much higher rate than they do when government does it. Mm-hmm. Government is, by definition, less efficient.
Yes.
And makes poorer decisions by and large with those dollars. There are things that have to have money spent on them, and the efficiency of those dollars isn't always the top priority. Mm-hmm. We have a healthcare spend that has to be done. We have a public education spend that has to be done, and we're not talking about efficiencies. But to say that those are investments that somehow we'll get more out of those dollars than we will if we give them back to individual Iowans, well, that's just core conviction for you and I.
Yeah.
So that's where we come on that. Anyway, I'm glad we got that out. That's been a few days, but It's just a hit piece, trying to get people
so,
spun up
you know,
that the maybe the bottom line that we should not even care about this, but this governor and this legislature has a terrific story to tell and a terrific track record on the stewardship of taxpayer dollars and their management of the state budget, and long may it continue.
Yeah, Uncle Sam did not create our fiscal foundation. Governor Reynolds did.
Yeah, and the taxpayers of the state of Iowa that have been paying the bill.
Yeah,
and are getting their money's worth.
Yeah.
And this state is in stronger situation because of it. Well, great. Okay, now that's all I got. I'm going to ask you again. You got anything else for us, John?
I there's other things, but
I got good news for you then. You know what the good news is?
What's that?
This is the last time we're going to record a podcast.
Really?
Yeah, we're going to come back into it again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. With that having been said, thanks for bearing with us on our extended hiatus. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.